Hello. Thank you. Good evening. How are you all doing on this spring day? Yes. Woo! Summer, yes, summer, spring. So before we start, I just want to say hello to all the students from the Tapco High School and the DeWitt Clinton High School. So thanks for coming. Are you out there? Yes. Yes. So I am so thrilled tonight to have these extraordinary musicians, great friends, dear friends up here to help, not to help, but to share, to help me, to share stories and real discussion about this extraordinary duo, the Assad brothers. So I'm just going to introduce quickly. This is Thomas Flippen, who is from a soloist, composer, and also part of the duo Noire, a wonderful guitar duo. And Simon Powis, Dr. Simon Powis, who has a fabulous, incredible website called the Classical Guitar Corner. You all should go to it immediately. And also a phenomenal guitarist, great soloist, arranger, and extraordinary pedagogue. And so that is, his name is actually, I haven't even said your name, right? Did I say it? Simon Powis.
Hello, my name is Simon.
Simon Powis. And here we have Joao Luiz, a dear friend, composer, soloist, and also part of a most extraordinary duo called the Brazil Duo. So thank you. Yes. So thank you all for being here tonight. I got stuff to do, so I'm out. I'm out. No,
Let's take it away, guys.
I did. So this duo that we're going to hear tonight is so extraordinary, and I really felt the need to bring together. Actually, the cool thing about this panel too is, the different countries to discuss the impact of the Assads. I'm going to tell just a brief story about when I first heard the Assad duo. I was living in 72nd Street, 24 West 72nd Street, above the guitar maker Tom Humphrey. I used to play Tom's guitars, and I used to like to say that I lived above my maker. Thank you, thank you. Anyway, Tom and I were just like brothers, and he said, "You gotta come downstairs right now. I don't care what you're doing, come down right now." I said, all right, all right. And I get down, and the Assads had, I think, pretty much just arrived in New York City. And there was this little room that Tom had in his apartment that was kind of octangular, and we would all hang there and play his guitars until all hours of the night. This is back in 1980, God, I'm going to say 81 or 80. And the Assad duo played, yeah, it was 80 or 79 even. And the Assad duo played, and they were about to make their debut on this stage. And they just played in this room, and I'm sitting on the floor, and they're playing from memory. I remember them playing the Brower particularly. And I had never, my head turned around. I never saw anything, I never heard anything like it, and my life was altered. And we kind of want to discuss why was my life altered. So I'm going to turn to Joao and say just when the first time you heard the Assads and what effect it had on you.
So the first time I heard the Assads, I was, I think, 14 or 15. This was in Brazil. And I remember I used to go to concerts with my recorder, right? I had some of the albums, well, the vinyls at that time, that I love it, but I never heard them live. So then they come to São Paulo, my town, and I went to see the concert. And I was so blown away that when the concert ended, I forgot to press the stop on the recorder, and I pretty much lost my way. I couldn't find the exit of the theater. It was I was in shock, really. And I remember, well, since then I was telling them, and I have all the tapes and the programs that I saved. I've been to 50 concerts of the Assads, and it's just, I think, I don't consider them just being the greatest guitar ensemble in the history of guitar, but also one of the greatest ensembles in general.
In general.
Yeah, in general.
Yeah, great point. Sai, do you
Well, my first encounter with them was when I was a student, and I think, you know, I'm the generation as a student, YouTube hadn't hit yet, and so a CD was still the vehicle. And in Australia, as Joao and I were sort of saying, you know, some countries are a little bit delayed in terms of their access to materials. And so I got it as an undergrad, and it was one of those CDs, actually my roommate had it, I didn't have it, and I just, if it's possible to wear out a CD, I would have. Just sort of, you go over little things like the cross-string trills and the ornaments, the fact that in things like the Cyclops, the remote transcription, they're trills together. I mean, I think one of the first striking things as someone who plays the guitar is the technical virtuosity, just the speed and the accuracy and the seeming ease of everything.
Yeah, so unlike you, like you were doing the CD, I saw it right there for the first time.
Right.
So it was like, Thomas.
So I think I was also an undergrad, and everyone had been telling me, like, oh, you're getting serious about classical guitar, you have to get this CD. And I got the CD, Latin American Guitar Music, and there was this one track on there that Sergio composed, I believe he composed it in the 80s, called Three Sinas Brasileiras. And there's this one movement of it called Pinote, and it just blew my mind, because we've talked about them being kind of virtuosic, but they weren't just virtuosic just technically in that recording. It was virtuosity as a composer, because the arrangement just uses this incredible fusion of jazz harmonies with classical guitar playing that I thought was really revolutionary. And then it was virtuosity as an ensemble, the way they were trading notes and trading rhythms, virtuosity in articulation, the way that they would bring out certain notes to trade off who was the important part. It was just mind-blowing. And I listened to that on repeat, just that one track, for a full week. I was just so in love with it.
Beautiful. I love it. I mean, you bring up this word virtuosity, and you know, it's used almost to a degree where it almost has lost its definition. So let's just, you've already touched on some things, but let's just talk about what I mean to say is that when most people say virtuosity, they think of fast playing. But let's just go talk about the Assad's virtuosity, the different dimensions of it. So, because the first thing that I noticed was articulation. Can you say something about that, or?
Well, yeah, I think definitely articulation and the way they, I think they're one of the guitar ensembles that better handle rubato together. Right. And that's very, I think what they do, even playing Scarlatti, there's some sonatas on the album, like the Baroque album, you see they start in a way that other people, they wouldn't do like rubato in the beginning, but it's so together. And it's so like, it draws your attention. It's different, and it's always together. Articulation, dynamics, the intentions, they're like 100% of the time together.
Right.
I think it's one of like the few like guitar ensembles, it's so hard to like to play together, 2 guitars or 3 guitars because of the attack, and what the Assads do, it's just like, it sounds like a miracle, really.
Well, let's just talk about that. You just repeat that. Why, or if any of you want to say, why is 2 guitars so hard? Why is it so difficult?
It's, I think, the most demanding and unforgiving in the sense that the attack of a guitar string is, if you visualize it, it's sort of like immediate drop off. Whereas if you had a bow, if you had 10 violinists, you can kind of sneak in there. Even if someone came in a fraction of a second later than the other, it would still be a smooth melodic arc that we perceive. But a guitar, I mean, where's DeWitt Clinton? Do you want to, okay. DeWitt Clinton, you got to clap with me, all right? But everyone from the school, ready? 1, 2.
And Topco too.
1, 2, 3. So it kind of sounds more or less together. Now I need the teacher, I think you put up your hand. All right, let's clap together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Well, helping me with my point. That was more than one person, but it's so much easier to discern when things are not exactly together on the guitar. And I think these 2 musicians are, seasoned duet players, but I've played with a lot more bowed instruments, like cello and violin, and it's just so much more forgiving. You can sort of get away with a lot more, even if you're not exactly in time. And I think we sometimes take it for granted when we listen to duos like the Assads, that it just seems so normal. And it's like, oh yeah, of course, you just play together. What's the problem?
Right.
It's really incredibly difficult.
Thomas.
And I mean, so that thing that we just observed that Simon had the schools do, Topco and DeWitt Clinton, I've heard that referred to as the ping-pong effect of bad guitar playing. So when people play, it's like ping-pong instead of being exactly at the same time. And that's one of the things that's so easy to tell when you watch a lot, like an amateur guitar ensemble play. But with the Assads, I think it's important to say, like, not only are they always together, but they're always together despite the difficulty of the music. And so no matter how dense or thick the texture, no matter how fast the arpeggios involved, they're always in perfect unison. And I think what Joao was touching on was, in terms of rubato, that's a really difficult thing to coordinate with an ensemble. And just like, they kind of have this psychic ability to just kind of feel when the next note's going to happen, and they're always together. And it's just really remarkable playing. And I think one of their greatest legacies is kind of showing what's possible as a guitar ensemble, like what's to be expected to be considered world class.
Right. I mean, what's interesting too is that, talking about the ensemble, a lot of the music that they play, and they are for instance, tonight we're going to hear Cordoba, which is one of my favorite beloved pieces in the world, but it's for one person. You know, it's a pianist. So when you're talking about this rubato, to get that kind of freedom with two people in piano music, that one person, or Rameau, the same thing, is extraordinary.
Or even Debussy when they recorded the Suite Bergamasque.
Right.
To play like the second movement, or even the first. It's really like, and I think that has to do also with their like immense musicality, which is different. It's not very traditional in a sense, like the way they think like about phrases. They do their own thing. Because the other like thing is, I see with the Assads, when you listen to Segovia, you hear the first note, you know there's Segovia playing. And I think they are one of the few like ensembles you listen to the first two notes. Oh, those are the Assads.
Right, right.
It says something about like their unique way of like phrasing and playing and breathing together. I think it's very natural.
Right. It's, you know, we've tossed some names around, Rameau, Debussy. We haven't mentioned Piazzolla, Gismonti. Let's just say a few words about what they've done for the repertoire of the duo guitars, because there isn't, and I mean, they are starting out tonight with a duo by Fernando Sor, but there isn't a plethora of duo music. Do you want to say something about their contribution to the?
Well, I think the most striking thing is when you start digging to find out just exactly what compositions they were involved in, or either arrange themselves or to sort of bring it to the duo repertoire or collaborated with composers. It just is a massive contribution. And I think it's a little bit of a comment on their humble personalities, that they don't sort of proclaim this leadership role. They just do. They just, they just contribute and have been for decades, and they've left this great asset towards the guitar community in that respect. So we've got all those recordings that, you know, many of the arrangements wouldn't have existed unless Sergio, out of necessity, probably started to do them.
And then this whole Piazzolla thing that we, as guitarists, and not only, again, talking about just guitar, every like group like who plays Piazzolla, we all take it for granted, but they started playing Piazzolla when Piazzolla was not famous. Late 70s, that was like Sergio's, okay, so we like Piazzolla. They were like pioneers. And people, but they don't, as you said, oh, we started playing Piazzolla. No, you know? Yeah, they started something new.
That is, and I think everybody goes to them. It's a go-to how to play Piazzolla. I remember that being in Tom Humphrey's room, and Odair and I were going to get some food, and I asked him, so tell me about Piazzolla, and he said, Piazzolla everybody thinks should be played fast. This is exactly what I remember him saying. Of course, he's in the back room. He says, it's not so much fast as much as punch and accent, and it was teaching, you know, just getting hummus or whatever we were getting. But let's Joao, I want to ask you a little bit about the history, you know, because we were talking earlier, the Assad history in Brazil and coming up, and you were talking about Sergio as a soloist, and can you just give us a little bit about the guitar history of the Odair brothers and how it all fits in, and how you as the next generation, you and Doug.
Certainly, well, Brazil, and I remember that like I was talking to somebody else about like Brazil like producing like great duets right?
Right.
Great guitar duos. And it all started with the Abreu brothers in the 60s and 70s. And the funny thing is that they had, like the Abreus and the Assads, they had the same teacher. And she just like taught the Abreus and the Assads. Yeah, she was not like a teacher in the sense of, okay, I have many students. No, she just taught them four, right? And they're like, and I remember their concerts in Brazil. So, of course, you should know that they're like a huge name, but in a particular venue they're playing, let's say in São Paulo and Rio, like the two main cities in Brazil, you see people from TV, like the famous pop singers, they all like come to the Assad's concerts. Cool. It's a cool thing to see. You see a lot of like of the famous people from TV. Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. And this whole thing with the, like, we're talking about like ensemble playing, they're being like one of the greatest like ensembles in history. But there's another like important information, I think. When they started as musicians, it was chamber music. Because like playing music with the family, the father, accompanying the father, like playing the popular music from Brazil. And it's pretty much like chamber music because it's very organized, playing choro, which is our main instrumental music. So like the roles are very well defined, like one like does the accompaniment, and then you do the solo, you do like counterpoint to like, and they rehearse, they learn how to play in a group from early on, probably when they were like 8 and like 12.
Wow.
Practicing chamber music from early on. I think that's one of the things that we see when it's so natural what they do because it's not that kind of, okay, so you rehearse a lot with your ensemble. You get I think, two different kinds of ensembles. That ensemble that sounds very tight, but they do a lot of like, they cue each other, they look at each other, and you see like the rehearsal, the work they've done. But with the Assads, you don't see any of that. Because they were like practically like born playing together. Right? I think it's chamber music. They started playing chamber music in a way. Of course, it's popular music, but it's very organized pretty much in the way chamber music is.
Right.
And I think it may seem tangential, but one of the beautiful things about watching chamber music is the interaction of the people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you also, if I imagine there are a lot of guitarists in the audience, and I think there's a heightened enjoyment of the concert because we also understand the guitar. But we all have, well, not we all don't, but many of us have siblings. And I think there is something magical about the fact that they are brothers. And imagining that kind of relationship for that long, for that kind of intensity, and at a professional level, and yet they still seem to get along pretty well. I know. I mean, that's a beautiful thing to watch. And I think it does add a certain attraction or magic to the actual performance itself. Mm-hmm. You know.
Totally, totally.
And also that connection about not feeling like it's not completely rehearsed, it just happens, and without mm-hmm. music in front of you, it's just like it's like they're composing on the spot. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the memory thing, because that was back in 1979 when I first heard him in Tom's room. That was mind-bending to see them play from memory. You just didn't see that, and it led to me and my wife we had our debut coming up, flute and guitar, and we did it from memory because of them. I mean, completely. It was so compelling, you know, to see these guys play so effortlessly from their hearts, you know. I mean, to move on just slightly, TJ, you were saying just about Django. We're going to hear Django tonight, which is Bella. We'll say a little bit about Bellinati, and then he's going to.
Well, Paulo, I would say coming also from this like long, like great tradition of like guitar composers from Brazil. You have like Canhoto, Garoto, Dilermando Reis. And Paulo we call him like the ambassador of the Brazilian guitar. He's one of the greatest like composers in Brazil for guitar.
And right. So this piece, but you were just, so go ahead.
So they're going to be playing a piece to conclude their program tonight called Django by Paulo Bellinati. And this is a very well-known guitar duet. A lot of ensembles play it because it's such an audience favorite. It's such enjoyable music. But there's this moment in the piece, about halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, where the piece breaks out into a percussion section. And if you look at the score, Bellinati gives like a cool diagram of a guitar, and you see the strings, and he puts some symbols on the guitar of where he wants the hits to happen for you to hit the body of the guitar to produce a particular sound. So what's originally done, what most duos do, is when they get to that part, they play this. And then it jumps to another part like, and it does that. But one of the interesting things about Sergio and Odair, and I think this is what makes them really special, is that they're always thinking of how they can make the music better, how it can sing more. And a really good friend of mine was studying this piece with Sergio at the San Francisco Conservatory where he teaches. And he was saying, you know, I think the rhythm is too heavy there. I think the percussive hits are too heavy. So he said that when he plays it, what they do is that they completely change where you can hit the guitar. So once you start playing as an ensemble, you realize, you know, each place that you hit the guitar has a completely different effect. The finger that you use, whether you have your hands muting the strings and killing those overtones, it's all completely different. So I think it's interesting when you see them play this piece tonight to realize that they've kind of completely revamped that percussion section to suit their own musical taste and to kind of enhance the music, and I think that's really fascinating. And if I can expound on that a little more.
Go, dude.
I think just the brilliance of their arrangements, because we were talking about how they grew the repertoire so much. Like just one example, they did this arrangement of Sonata 1, Opus 22 by Alberto Ginastera. And if you listen to the original piano version, and then you listen to what they did with it, it's incredible. And it actually, I feel like the first rule of making an arrangement for the guitar is to make sure that it's at least as good as the original or better. And I think what they did with it is even better than the original. Sergio and Odair, they add all these percussive hits, double stringing, harmonics, all sorts of cool percussive effects. It's just brilliant. And I think when you hear them play this stuff, you just assume it was written for the guitar. You don't see all the work that went into the creative work of how to make it different, how to have an interplay between the instruments by trading off parts and such. So.
And we haven't even touched on Sergio as the composer, arranger. This brings us right up to again, as you were saying, Sergio doesn't, this guy has written a truckload of music. Can you say something about his compositions, either of you?
Well, I'll start by before tonight I read a bunch of interviews that I could find online. And one thing that I thought that struck me about Sergio's commentary was that he deferred praise to his brother about how phenomenal he was on the instrument. And as a young child, he sort of decided, well, I can't compete with that, and I'm going to play to my strengths, which would be arranging, and then further down the track, composing. And there's sort of other aspects of the duo that make them, and they're not balanced. It's not just two people that just find it completely easy to play the instrument. They're both focusing on strengths that they have. And I think that started his arrangement path, part of necessity for the duo, but also because he was good at it. And then it started forming into, through that process, you get to deconstruct compositions. And so he sensed the liberty to put them back together with a bit of artistic license.
Right.
And then, that feeds directly into composition, because you start studying the masters, and then that informs very much how you play. And Joao, you were saying how when he does write, he writes for the duo, for himself and his brother.
Oh yeah, I think he's one of the most creative musicians I've ever come across. Because if you look at the arrangements and the idea, because if you go back to when they started playing the Ginastera and Rhapsody in Blue and Debussy, who would imagine playing that on the guitar, right? It's just knowing how he can stretch his brother, and also his abilities of writing music, and knowing so much about harmony, because I think he had a teacher for composition. He studied composition formally with a teacher in Brazil. So, and all his knowledge of not only guitar but counterpoint, harmony, and having that his own brother doing stuff that it's just incredible. I think you can expand a lot the repertoire in that way, because the way he writes for the guitar, again, now we take it for granted, but when they did, they were unique in that respect, that kind of arrangement. If you look at the repertoire they play, the Gnatali or the Piazzolla, it's a lot, it's very dense. If we compare with like arrangements from Presti Lagoya, from Baroque music, or like even the duets by Fernando Sor, where you have first guitar plays the melody, second guitar plays the accompaniment, and then they switch, right? But the way Sergio writes, it's much more intricate. Another example of like this very heavy writing, but knowing his like strengths as like a arranger, composer, and Odair's. So the Piazzolla, Suite Troiliana, the first movement, it's very like difficult for both players. And then when you see like Sergio's part, you might think, okay, Odair plays the melody the whole time, it's really fast. But what Sergio's doing, he's doing the whole band.
Yeah.
And it's not very like common to see that kind of arrangement, so heavy. And when they play, you're just listening to like many voices. It's so natural. It doesn't sound difficult. I think they brought that to the to us. Now that we arrange that way, we want to play that kind of music.
I mean, Sergio's arrangements are masterclasses if you were to study them, and by getting the original and really seeing the choice. It's all about choices, you know, and the choices he seems to have made are nothing less than brilliant and succinct, and they make the music. It's all about the music, you know. Like he really finds the core, in my humble opinion, the core of the piece, and makes it shine on the guitar, illuminates it in the heart of it in a manner that we've never seen, you know. And you know, so it's again, anybody that wants to study arranging, never mind composing, you have this wonderful body of work that Sergio has given us. And then there's tons of, I was talking to David, my friend, all our friends, David Tannenbaum, saying how, you know, irritated he is with Sergio because apparently Sergio has tons of arrangements of Bach and things that are just in his drawer or something. It's like, you know, publish these things. Oh, incredible. I hate to do this. I just want to ask one tiny, do we have one tiny, I'm seeing Nancy back there, one tiny question. Do you think the Brazil, the fact that they're from Brazil, how does that play into? I mean, it's who they are, but I mean, I didn't know. It's hard for me to formulate the question, but I find there's, you know, you know where I'm going, like the influence of the country on their playing.
I think that's to me. Not only because I'm from Brazil, but I think it's the best question because the way Brazilians talk, we're kind of like laid back. And don't like misunderstand, like laid back to like equals like irresponsible. It's just like the way you feel music. And it was mentioned before, the accents.
Right.
It has to do with like the accents of the language.
The language, right.
And the other thing, when they play Baroque music, talking about accents, they put the accents where they think they should be. Not necessarily, well, the original tells you to do this, but you hear, and that's why you hear, the Assad's playing. Because of that, the way they speak, the language, the country, it's on the music, it's on the Baroque music, it's on the Argentinian music, because if you listen to people playing Piazzolla, people in Argentina, they sound different. The Assads, they have this kind of like accent, this almost mannerism to their playing it's really unique. And it's very catchy because it's very elegant, it's very sensual. Everything they play. Cordoba, so you're gonna hear, they have their accent for everything.
Very, well, with that, we're in just, half an hour's time. We were lucky enough to hear this incredible duo. I gotta thank all of you so much for all of what you said today and the contribution, and thank you for coming. And this is I think our last concert of the series, so we'll see you all next year. All of you don't, in fact, maybe you just spend your summer in this room. Just come, no. Anyway, have a great night. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you.